Welcome LinkedIn. It's 2019. It's on my first hashtag Ask Alex of the year, and I'm delighted to have special guest Brian Galicia of Microsoft with me, which is absolutely awesome. Brian, Microsoft is now showing, it talks about the changing culture and the behavior building around Carol Dweck's mindset theory, and how critical kind of a growth mindset is in kind of anything you do in life for improvement, for whatever it might be. So what's your take on what the modern seller, or for that matter, anybody in 2019, what behavior should they be thinking about either improving or changing or considering?
Yeah, no, thanks, Alex, for reaching out and having this dialogue, and honored that I'm the first guest that you have for kicking off the new year. So happy New Year, everybody. So at Microsoft, as you mentioned, Alex, I think we are constantly, as you can imagine, having a growth mindset or this learn-it-all culture, to where we constantly have to be thinking about improvement, especially from a sales organization. And so when I think about sellers, because my role at Microsoft is all about the things that we do with LinkedIn Sales Navigator and Dynamics, which of course you're very familiar with, and you've helped us from a great partnership perspective in driving that, is making sure that sellers are maximizing the capabilities of social. And what I mean by social, it's not just about posting things or doing things just to do things to say I'm doing things socially, but really embracing it from a standpoint of things like making sure, does your LinkedIn profile provide value to a customer who may be consuming information? Because as we all know, customers don't necessarily just buy to buy. They really do a lot of research up front before they even engage any seller. And what are the things that they do is they look at people's profiles. I would suspect like if you, me, and anyone listening to this conversation, and those who follow Alex, you all realize that the first thing all of us typically do, similar to our own consumer aspect, before we go to a restaurant, before we buy something, we research. We do all that stuff. The same thing occurs where I remember when you, Alex, you first reached out to me, what I do? I looked at your profile. And what did your profile say about you? And I think the number one thing, or a couple things that I would say, especially because we started the new year, if you're a seller and you have not updated your profile, let's say in the past 2 months, you need to be going in there and making sure that it's relevant. And what I mean by relevant, it does not read like a resume. It needs to read like, well, unless you're looking for a job, but it needs to read like a resource, to where if I was looking at Alex, I immediately know what value he can bring to me if I wanted to have a conversation with him. It doesn't talk about all these accolades. Well, it provides proof points to say what he does really well, but it provides accolades to say this is how someone can, in professional services and whatever it is, can provide value. So that's number one. Think about how your profile is customer centric and provides value. Two, whether or not you're using Sales Navigator or not, you have to be on social channels consuming the information of what people are doing in the customers you're selling to. Because guess what? There's a lot of great insight that you can gather if you take the time to do your research, and a lot of us go to websites, etc. But doing more than just going to a website, following people on LinkedIn, and even if you don't use Sales Navigator, just doing a simple follow to see what they're posting, what's their profile, what are they doing, and not just on LinkedIn, on Twitter. See, because most people have Twitter accounts. Being able to see what are things that are top of mind for them to build a relationship. And because part of it is there may not be an opportunity to have value or sell that value to a customer right now, but the whole thing about having conversations, because Alex, we've when you initially reached out, this was what, 6 months ago, or I don't know. Yeah, something like that, where we didn't have, we've never kind of met face to face, but we've had dialogues and engagements over LinkedIn, over email exchanges. And so being able to drive a compelling value proposition with a customer may not occur on day one. So critical is kind of finding the right balance of what that person cares about. And then once you do that, sending a personalized connection on LinkedIn, and then sharing that value. So hopefully the second piece of your profile is it's not just about having a profile that's customer centric, but are you posting things on your social channels that are adding relevance to people you're trying to attract to add value to, whether you're selling a product or you're selling a service. And so, as you know, like for me and for what you do, Alex, we do those things consistently because that's what drives the engagement. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think it really starts with figuring out, A, what does your profile mean to your customer, your potential buyer? And then two, how are you utilizing social to help drive valuable conversations with your customer?
And I completely agree with everything you're saying, but how have you, I'm assuming you've met resistance maybe internally with some of your team where they go, well, this doesn't work, or my buyers aren't on social, that kind of fixed mindset behavior, dare I say, where you're kind of challenging their innate behavior, that the way they, I've always done it this way and this way's worked. So how have you kind of helped them overcome or go about that behavior change that ultimately needs to happen to make these first steps?
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge, as you can imagine, Alex, for you and me who've been sellers. It does take a growth mindset and a learn it all attitude to change. And it's really tough because if you're a seller, and especially for anyone listening to this this video, if you're a seller and things are working for you and you hit your number, then it's really tough to change that behavior. And
Yeah.
I totally get that. But what if I like using football or sports analogies? When you win, so I'm thinking about the UK and the soccer. Like, let's say you were in the Premier League and you won the league that year. Are you satisfied with the status quo? You can imagine as an athlete, are you satisfied with the status quo to where you think you can do that? By doing the same behavior, do you think you can achieve that same result the following year? Maybe, but most likely no, because things change, things evolve, people have higher quotas. You might have different territories, etc. So my first thing is like showing the path to success, because when you can share the results and say, if you incorporate this, even if you're the best seller ever, if you incorporate these tools, wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? And so if we were having this dialogue right now, Alex, if I gave you 20 pounds, would you turn down 20 pounds? Probably not. You'd like, hey, I'll take it. I'll take free money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This type of feedback, that this is somewhat free insight that anyone can immediately start to do and take action on. And the other component is, especially because of New Year's resolutions and people thinking about goals they want to take, I'm not a fan of working out, but I have to for health reasons, etc. Because I'm getting older, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So you think about the same results when you work out. If you work out maybe twice and that's it in January, or let's say you do a couple of things in January and you stop, that doesn't change the outcome or results. It takes a mindset, exactly your point, Alex. It takes a mindset where you have to periodically, not every day, take slow steps over time. Consistency, I think, is the critical thing that I'm trying to share. If you're consistent about how you do things and have that open mindset of doing changes, I highly guarantee you're going to see results, because by the time you put some of these things in practice, you're going to see the results. You may see it in 3 months. You may see it in 6 months. You may not see it for an entire year, but when you make that change, you're all of a sudden going to start to attract different types of buyers, or different buyers. But you're going to attract the buyers you've been trying to engage with to begin with, because they're finding you. They're finding that experience because they're starting to see you as a thought leader, starting to see you as an influencer in whatever you sell or whatever you're trying to provide to add value to potentially them.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So in kind of summary, to wrap up, sort your profile up. If you haven't looked at it in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 months, talk to your audience, unless you're looking for a role. But I would even argue, separate conversation, that your profile can still be a resource. And if you're good at what you do, the jobs are going to find you anyway. Consistency, and then content, and just keep at it, and things will happen. They absolutely will happen. And I can sit here 2 years now into working for myself in association with Adam and Tim and Phil from Digital Leadership Associates, that actually the market's now coming to us. The pipeline is self-fulfilling. I still have to go out there and be proactive, but the pipeline is now self-fulfilling, all generated through social. And in terms of resource, are there anywhere that you could point people to, either Microsoft, LinkedIn, or your own stuff, where they can find out more information around this?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is, if for those who follow Alex, follow him. If you look at my profile, you're going to find a ton of resources that are applicable to the point of view. And for me, I always, like you, if sharing not just a Microsoft point of view, but sharing things that I'm finding that are valuable in selling in general. What are things that are helping sellers be more productive, having more strategic conversations? Because exactly how you summarize it, Alex, is spot on. Because the whole idea is the value of social is that it gives you an opportunity to engage people when they're ready to buy or attract people to information. But the whole thing is like what we're doing right now. It's taking a conversation that starts digitally and taking it offline. Granted, we're doing this over Skype, but having this dialogue where we're building this relationship over time, because sometimes you can't immediately say, hey, can you buy this from me? Yeah. No one typically does that anymore, unless you're selling a commodity. If you're selling in a B2B scenario, you have to build that relationship, and part of utilizing social allows you to drive that relationship digitally, but making sure that as you do that digitally, the whole intent is how do you then drive it offline and start to build a relationship like we're doing right now over a video Skype engagement.
Exactly. Perfect. Awesome. Well, this has gone on longer than my usual hashtag Ask Alex, but I think it's been really covered some really important points since the beginning of 2019. So, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know it's early for you. It's getting late for me on a Friday, but I felt this is really important. And here's to an amazing 2019 for you and for everybody that takes the time to follow hashtag Ask Alex and watch me. So I look forward to seeing where both our journeys go during the course of this year. So thank you.
No, thank you, Alex. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.